Hello everyone, and welcome. In this video, we're taking a look at the life of one of the most famous female bartenders to ever exist, and a very special one at that, having worked in the industry way back in the early 1900s. But allow me a brief tangent here to show you this book. Do you recognize it? For those of you who don't, this is the Savoy Cocktail Book, written by Harry Craddock in 1930. For many bartenders, this book and the name of Harry Craddock will ring a bell, and he is undoubtedly one of the most famous figures of his time. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there was a woman who came before Craddock in the same role, in the same hotel, and who laid the framework for him to build upon. And of course, that woman is Ada Coleman. As we begin to explore her incredible life, we will learn a little of what it was like to be a woman in bartending at that time, and how it is all too common for history to leave behind these influential female figures. So let's start all the way back at the beginning, when Ada was born in 1875. To a modest, working-class family. As such, there are few records of her mother and father, as record-keeping was scarce at the time, particularly for the working class. What we do know is that her father was a steward at a golf club owned by the D'Oyly-Carte family, known for their businesses including operas, theaters, and hotels. When Ada's father died, she was 24 years old, and as she and her father were close with the D'Oyly-Cartes, they offered her a job in a flower shop at the Claridge's Hotel, which they owned. At some point around 25 in the early 1900s, she switched positions to begin bartending at the same hotel. It was there that she made her first ever cocktail, a Manhattan, that she learned from Fisher, who was the hotel's wine butler. Now, at this time, there were female bartenders, or barmaids as they were called, but it was still primarily a job held by men. Some really interesting context of this time period is that as part of the temperance movement, which was mostly spearheaded by women, there was an aim to actually ban women from working in bars. They had some good reasons for this, as many bars were essentially only hiring young, attractive-looking females, using some Hooters-type logic to get men to drink more and spend more. But at that time, it could be a dangerous environment for women, as they had fewer rights than men and little that they could do if they were sexually harassed or assaulted. However, there were also many women in bartending who advocated for themselves and fought back against that kind of legislation. The job paid better than other classically female jobs, and they found it less monotonous and more fulfilling. All that is to say that it was a very uncertain time to be a woman in bartending, but Ada pushed onward, and despite being considered old for a barmaid at only 25, she was determined to continue learning and continue working behind the wood with an incredible passion for her guests and the drinks that she made. So a few years go by, and at another hotel called the Savoy Hotel, also owned by the D'Oyly-Carte family, there was a head bartender named Frank Wells who was retiring in 1903. Ada was subsequently chosen to take on this role and moved over to the Savoy Hotel's American bar as the head bartender. She was one of the first and certainly one of the earliest recorded women to hold a position like this. She worked there as a head bartender for an incredible 23 years and became beloved by her community and her guests. In these 23 years, Ada was involved in the lives of many. She was a big fan of celebrities and theater culture. Some of her famous regulars included Mark Twain, Marlene Dietrich, Charlie Chaplin, Diamond Jim Brady, the Earl of Lonsdale, and the Prince of Wales. At home, she would often host dinner parties full of singing and dancing, and of course, people from the theater groups, such as those from the D'Oyly-Carte family. She also attended charity events and gave her time and skills back to the community. During this time period, the most famous and influential bars were in hotels, and Ada made sure that the Savoy was no exception. While working at the Savoy, she created her most famous drink, and that is the Hanky Panky. This is a gin drink with a little bit of sweet vermouth and some Fernet. This is a delicious Manhattan-style gin drink with those herbal, minty undertones. She made this drink originally for Charles Hawtrey, who was a comedic actor at the time and, according to Ada, one of the best judges of cocktails that she knew. When he asked her one day to make him something new because he was tired and he needed something with a punch to it, Ada got to work. The next time he came in, she served it up to him, and he exclaimed, by Jove, this is the real hanky-panky. At the time, it was a phrase for saying it was a kind of witchcraft or wizardry, and the name stuck. Ada Coleman would also turn out to be a crucial source of information for future bartenders, as during her tenure, she likely would have recorded many of the cocktails that she was making, her own creations, as well as the classics that were popular at the time. There's a funny story, actually, which involves another female bartender who also worked at the Savoy named Ruth Burgess, and she actually started a year before Ada in 1902. It has been said that the two women did not get along and may not have actually worked many shifts together because apparently Ada would not share her recipes with Ruth. Now, as we get on to the 1920s, near the end of Ada's bartending career, we find ourselves meeting Harry Craddock, who leaves America during Prohibition and begins bartending at the Savoy Hotel under Ada in 1920. Unfortunately, Craddock was not very fond of women in bartending, and he likely didn't respect Ada. In his 1930 book, the hanky-panky was the only cocktail that he gives her credit for, although it's very likely that we owe Ada for far more than Craddock would like us to think. Not only that, but Ada's retirement from bartending has always seemed slightly suspicious when you consider that they had closed the American bar temporarily for renovations in 1925, and subsequently announced the resignation of both Ada and her female coworker Ruth Burgess, only to name Harry Craddock as the head bartender post-renovations. Some have speculated that Craddock may have worked behind the scenes to undermine the women behind the bar, but it's very difficult to verify. Craddock would go on to strengthen the legacy of both the Savoy and the American bar, but it was only made possible because of the legacy that was left behind by Ada Coleman. After leaving bartending, much of her later life is a mystery, and almost completely undocumented, with conflicting stories. She likely stayed at the hotel to work part-time, either in the flower shop or helping manage the cloakroom. Her relationship with the D'Oyly-Carte family remained strong, and we know that she even received a 100-pound sum from Lucas D'Oyly in his will, which was a substantial amount at that time. It's hard to tell if she continued with these odd jobs part-time or if she ever got back into bartending, but I feel like there would be a record of it if she did. Ada was such a famous public figure at this time that there were several newspapers who published articles about her retirement. It's fascinating that for a figure who was once one of the most famous British bartenders of her time, the last 4 decades of her life are so unknown. There could be a few reasons for this. The nature of being a celebrity at that time usually meant that once you left the public eye, coverage disappeared. There was also a distinct lack of record keeping for working class people, especially for women. It's also possible that she decided to live a quiet life from her savings or from support of the D'Oyly-Carte family. In the end, Ada passed away peacefully at the ripe age of 91 in 1966. It's a bit sad that she never returned to bartending, and some imagine that this might have been another confirmation that Harry Craddock had pushed her out against her will. Perhaps she felt disheartened after being behind the wood for 23 years and decided not to return. But it's also possible that she left the Savoy feeling satisfied with her work and decided it was time to move on. What the real answer is, we may never know. But today, nearly 60 years after her death, Ada's influence continues to grow in ways that she never could have imagined. Her hanky-panky cocktail is now officially recognized by the International Bartenders Association as one of the unforgettables, putting it next to some of the legendary cocktails like a Manhattan and a Negroni as one of the most important cocktails in history. But perhaps the most meaningful tribute to Ada's legacy is the Ada Coleman Project, launched in 2024 by industry veterans Christine Bocchino and Caitlin Wilkes. This groundbreaking initiative creates opportunities for women in hospitality by maintaining a global database of accomplished women in the drinks industry and providing resources for networking and education. It's exactly the kind of support system that would have helped more women follow in Ada's footsteps back in her day. From a working class girl who lost her father young to an international icon inspiring gender equality efforts for over a century, that is quite a legacy. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I will see you again in the next video.